I'm Sol, and yes, time for another video, which is kind of like a rare thing from my end, mostly because what I prefer to work with um, is clients, and it takes all my time. So yeah, and I'm happy for that. Thank you for coming and sharing with me. And before we get started, if you are interested in working with me, you will find the little uh, place you can find me underneath here. Thank you. All right, so the reason I'm coming back into the world of YouTube right now is that, well, I started this series on Venus, and now I want to continue because I think that work is so important. Her archetype of union of opposites, union of differing energies are still so relevant. It will always be very relevant as we are 7 billion people and we are kind of struggling to make things work here on Earth. And it starts in the little things. It starts in, like what inside of you, the relationship you have with all your little bits and, all your little paradoxes. Like I'm strong, but then I'm weak, and then I'm judgmental, but then I'm compassionate, and you have all kinds of paradoxes and polarities, and that's who we are. And these paradoxes and polarities, they can either create harmony or disharmony. If we manage to embody the paradox, if we manage to be fine with it, to be fine with being a lot of, like have a spectrum of expressions, then we're fine, right? We don't necessarily create a lot of war on the outside. We don't create distortions because we don't find it necessary. It's fine, like, yeah, I can hold space for this. But if we have a lot of inner disruptions, like how we dealt with being sensitive, for instance, or how we dealt with being angry and passionate, and how we dealt with being critical and intelligent. If that wasn't met in an okay fashion by our surroundings when we were growing up, we just solved it by becoming that person which we thought people would love to see and putting rest, well, in the basement, or it can live its own little life and turn into one of these things that suddenly pops up in a relationship as a projection, or pops up in a relationship as something you're projecting, expecting. In a way, it's like a negative dream. Once I was abandoned, I will always be abandoned. And I think that the union of these opposites, the union of everything that is creating disharmonies, the disharmony within, the disharmony without, the disharmony in groups, the disharmony on Earth, is healed by that thing we call Venus. That's the quality that we need to embody more in order to create harmony. She's the principle of beauty, right? And she's the principle of rhythm, frequencies that, like, and beautiful instruments that actually play harmony, that makes a harmonious energy. You've been there, yeah, you had that with yourself, a harmonious moment where you felt full of this sweet goddess energy, which we call the goddess. She's like filling our limbs up with sweetness from top to toe. When you have that perfect moment of peace on your couch and you're just happy with yourself and you can relax and you're fine. Life is good. You're chilled. Maybe you need to smoke a joint to get there, huh? Or you have to drink beer, or you have to do something to get there, like watch a movie. That's how Earth is today, yeah? We're so full of disruptive, disharmonious energies. We start these addictions. if you practiced, you didn't have to necessarily do something to have that energy. For instance, yoga is the perfect paradox healing. You go into yoga, you go into a science that is all about finding the midpoint between yang and yin, between Shiva and Shakti, between masculine and feminine, between day and night, life and death, up and down. The whole yoga is just simply that, right? That's the philosophy of yoga. And it's very Venusian. It's creating this harmony. You've had it with other people too. It's beautiful moments of peace and love and joy where you just feel like you can fill up each other with, like it's a circulation of energy. It's a circulation of energy. What you put out is being received, and what the other person has put out is being received. It's this kind of give energy. Now, there cannot be this give energy if there's only one giver, of course. And then after a while, it will be drained. So there are many ways this distortion of this beauty principle is happening. It happens within. I don't dare to give. I'm afraid to give. What would people think of what I have to give? Do people want my love? Do they want my attention? Do they want my hug? And there's a lot of people who are afraid to receive. Oh, I don't dare to receive. It's really super scary. It's making me feel extremely uncomfortable. Every time I receive something, I feel I have to give it back again. That's not giving. That's not receiving. You give something when you receive. Imagine how wonderful it feels to give somebody a gift and they actually receive it. It's the best feeling. It's like, yoo-hoo, you liked it? Oh my God, yeah! Like, that's super. It's like Sting said, music is its own reward. You just give it. And if somebody happens to receive it, it's wonderful. Thank you. You become so full of gratitude that your gift is received. Same with astrology. If people like my my nerd, I'm happy. I'm like, oh, you thought that was interesting? Cool. I'm happy. Thank you for letting me share. So giving and being on the other end of giving and then returning the giving and then has a lot to do with self-worth, don't it? I think it's easy to give. It's one of my easiest things, it's so easy for me to give. I have a lot to give, right? And it's typical. We either fall in one category or the other. Are you a giver or a receiver? It depends a little bit on the relationship. Sometimes you're the giver, sometimes you're the receiver. But I'm more curious about the distortions of each polarity. Like what happens? Do we really give? Or do you give with an expectation to get something back? Do you receive, or do you receive with a certain amount of guilt and shame and fear that now you owe something to somebody and that person owns you? Shameless. You have to give shamelessly and you have to receive shamelessly. Giving can be very easy. It's part of having some sort of control if that's your, agenda to give. Receiving, on the other hand, then you lose control. Then you have to let go of control and you have to surrender and you have to just open up and say, okay, man, thank you. I'm so grateful. I can be quite good at receiving too. And I think it really, like it comes together. Like like when you start practicing it, it's sort of like you become even a better giver and you become a better receiver. The more you give freely, the more you can receive freely. It's really the only way, right? And it's that yin yang that comes together. I mean, if you are in a situation where that principle is being in some way disrupted, where there's disharmony happening, inequality, one's doing all the rowing, all the working. If you're the one always calling your friend, or if you feel like you have to do so much in order to make things work, well, let go. Let go of the tension. Relax back into your own self. It's a demon, right? I'm using this word again. I love this word. I'm so obsessed with the story between Shiva and Shakti. And these are the basic principle of life. And Shiva and Shakti, you know, their separation led to the emergence of demons. And I think it's such a interesting concept that I would love to share with you guys, because it has so much to do with maintaining and sustaining and keeping and living and breathing and having great relationships. So let's just start with the basics, right? Shiva and Shakti are happily married. They get into a little, no, let's just say it as it is. Shiva gets a little disappointed with Shakti. Something in her way of behaving. He's, you know, it's typical men towards women. It's like, because women, you know, the female energy is like just sustaining everything instead of confronting it. And the masculine energy is always confronting things. It's like, that bullshit doesn't work, and doot, 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 doot. Whereas the woman is, shh, come on, let's keep the peace. So Shiva is the principle of sustaining things, and it's that part of you in a relationship that is, you know, keeping things up. It's sustaining things through love. And if it's good things that are being sustained, then her principle is part of, well, it is life. And it can only be good once you have that Shiva quality of death, discrimination, the third eye, whatever you want to call it, that capacity to confront things that are simply bullshit or that are threatening the union between these two. Shiva is the kind of person that goes, I don't trust that person. That person is not good for our garden. Get this person away. I don't trust that person's advice. I don't trust that person's input. I don't trust that. That's bullshit. That's a lie. That's an illusion. You know, that's the kind of Shiva energy that is necessary, because in love, which a lot of people fear because it's such a pure state, we are sometimes being invaded by things we're not supposed to have and that are potentially a destructive energy. So Shiva is kind of like the protector of Shakti, the principle of love. I mean, la la la, love, love, love. And then Shiva comes and says, yes, no, okay, that's good. Yeah, no, 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 yes, yes, yes. You know, and they live together as a functioning whole, and then life is great, safe to love again. But they have a little dispute, and well, it's a misunderstanding, and then, you know, due to this misunderstanding, Shakti goes and throws herself into fire. And the principle of death and life is being torn apart and tossed into, split apart. And Shiva goes and sits on his mountain and he's distant from the world. And Shakti, even though she's being reincarnated as Parvati, she's still out of union with her lover. They are looking for each other. The masculine principle and the feminine principle have been separated. That's what happened on Earth. Men and women are guided into war with each other very, very cunningly. It's the ultimate conspiracy. And we are being held apart in many ways. We need each other very much, right? There's nothing more refreshing than a masculine direction. And nothing is more loving and sweet than the feminine ability to love and give light to everything. It's real pure beauty, and when they come together, it's beautiful, right? But it's super distorted these days. It's like men hate on women and women hate on men. We don't trust each other anymore. And that's the whole story of Shiva and Shakti. He doesn't trust her. Who are you? She comes back in the form of Parvati and he doesn't really recognize her. And then the demons, they start to take over Earth, and it makes the other gods very, very worried. The demons take over the world. That's when you, for instance, in a relationship, get that kind of the split happens, and then you get an opening. Suddenly there's another lover. Suddenly there are negative people entering a relationship that can give bad advice, and suddenly the relationship is challenged. Suddenly you're not the one deciding anymore. Suddenly things happen. Maybe that's a way to say, okay, this has to go. But if that principle is active in a relationship from the beginning, and you have that kind of mutual respect and the understanding that one needs the other, then there's room for both, and both feel empowered and supported and loved by each other, instead of these "you don't like me" energies that very often pops up. Yeah. So that's the Shiva and Shakti story, and it goes back, you find it as well in Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is being, his kingdom is being threatened by invaders. And Lord Krishna tells him, you have to kill them. But I can't, Lord. It's my brothers, it's my sisters, it's my cousins. I love these people. And that's, again, that distortion of the feminine, where it's like, I don't dare to. What happens? I need these, I love them. You think it's love. Yeah, well, Lord Krishna is pretty basic. He says, well, it's either you or them, okay? And still, Arjuna dares not to kill them. So Lord Krishna turns himself into a demon, and he slays them all. He kills that which is not needed anymore. That's Shiva. And today we have, Venus has entered into her shadow period. She's gone into those degrees, and it will soon square Mars. And we have a long period of time now ahead of us until the 5th of October, where there's going to be a lot of Mars-Venus energy. Venus is going retrograde. She's coming back to look at her own value system, to look at that capacity to create harmony out of disharmony. That's just the general principle, right? How much beauty do you have in your relationships? How much beauty do you find you have in your life? And with beauty, I'm not talking about earrings and makeup. I'm talking about feeling beauty. It's a feeling, it's a dimension. You don't come home from work feeling beautiful if you had some sort of dispute with a colleague. You'd feel poisoned by the conflict somehow. So how do you come back to harmony? How do you let go of the tensions, the stress, the disruptions, the fears, the worries? And Mars, is also part of this, and that is can be a very dominant and disruptive energy that comes in and challenges this capacity for creating harmony. It's like, no, I don't want to be dominated. No, I don't want to, make compromises. No, I don't want to, I don't want to go into that union again because it didn't make me feel good. I don't want to be with that person. I don't want to continue that pattern. So it puts a certain element of fight into the whole energy. And together, the disruption, it could be simply fear as well. Mars is very instinctual. It's like, no, panic attack, get me out of here. Uh, I don't want to be compromised. I just want to do my thing when I want to do my thing. There's a lot of Martians out there who are really not into relationships because they don't know how to make cooperation work without sacrificing all of themselves, and then there's no room for that Martian energy. So it's, being able to find the midpoint between being somebody who's super good at compromising and super good at giving and super good at cooperation, and merge it with that which is more Shiva-like, which is more like, no, well, I can say yes to that, but no to that. That part which is more Martian, which is like the warrior of freedom, the protector of the core values that we carry inside, the protector of ourselves. And if we can merge these two principles, it's like having a minor healing of that Shiva and Shakti problem. Then you are ready and awake to protect your own boundaries. But you are also capable of letting them go and sometimes taking down your defense mechanisms and just being free enough to enjoy things. And this war that we have been going through, between the sexes and between, different parts of ourselves as well, you might really, in an ultimate fashion, that would be the real actual issue we're talking about. It's the relationship you have to yourself. That war, little by little, through conscious approach and through talking about it, healing it, going through this extremely evolving phase that we are going through actually on Earth. We are now looking at that split between the masculine and the feminine. And therefore we also, the part of why we're looking at it is due to this enormously high level of divorces that we have in our society. People don't make relationship work, right? And partly because we don't know who we are, and we have not gotten the opportunity to explore that. Who are you really? Do you really want to do that? Can you really feel good about that? Or are you just programmed? That's how I'm supposed to be, I think. So it's an excellent time where, like to really work a little bit inside first. Always, I start with the inside first. It's the only place I can work, huh? And there, from that point, be able to take direction and create something in my life that actually works. I'm not an expert, I'm just an apprentice, as we are all students on Earth. We're all students. Some of us might have a gift to just say things. It doesn't really matter, does it? What's difficult for one human being, what's scary, is scary for another human being as well, those big things. And what we all need, none of us, in that sense, are an exception. The basic stuff, the basic human rights, they're the same for everyone. And, well, we know that the fight for, having basic human rights met, it's still not one that we've won yet. So with those words, I would just wish you the best Venus retrograde period. She goes retrograde the 5th of October and returns again mid-November to direct motion. But she has a little bit of a shadow period before and after, so it's one of those waves. We just have to surf it, and there's a lot of windows of opportunity for those who wish to grow. So, yes, I wish you the best. Thank you for listening.